Have you ever been a normie? Like, like you wandered into some kind of hobby or an entertainment system or, something, and you approached the front desk of that thing and said, hey, what are people playing? Right? Like, you're a normie. Well, I've been that. I've totally been that. And it started when I went to the board game store in 2020 looking for some kind of game. Like a normie, I'm just like, hey, we have, I think it was Descent was a game that we already had, and my kids kind of like it or whatever. So what's like that? And I walked out with Gloomhaven, that massive box, and I opened it. I'm like, nope, not even gonna try. I ended up taking apart using the miniatures and stuff, but I largely have this massive box of Gloomhaven, and I'm like, I played Jaws of the Lion, and I thought that was fine. I don't know if I like the card-based RPG. Not the point. Well, anyways, in tabletop RPGs, I am a normie. And the moment I kind of started, closing this book, because our sessions just got so boring, and I got so tired of running them, and I got tired of my players complaining that everything was too easy, and then I'd amp it up, and it's just like, there was something exhausting about going into Dungeons & Dragons every week. And I understand, a lot of you are like, we're having a fine time playing 5e, it's no big deal. I get it. I was also a new DM at the time, and the last time I had Dungeon Mastered was I DM'd a one person, it was just me and one player game. And, it was my friend from Thailand, and I think he's probably just an agreeable sort when it comes to playing a role-playing game. I probably was a terrible DM then, too, okay? So I wasn't good at this, and week after week coming back to this thing, it was a struggle and a slog. So, once I kind of had it in my mind, I don't know if I want to do D&D anymore, I just dipped my toe into the matrix of different RPGs and started discovering a ton of different systems. The bottom one is Rangers of Shadowdeep. It's not actually it's more of a tabletop war game with a campaign. Anyways, the point is I'm looking into new systems. All right, let me move into the normie sphere once again. When I first started posting videos to this channel again, initially this a long time ago was a video game channel, and I probably could do a video game channel if I cared about video games, but I don't think there was ever a game I was good enough at, or I had an interesting enough take on, or that I loved enough that I could play week in and week out. So I could never do it. And anyways, when I started dabbling with YouTube again and trying to go, okay, what am I interested in? Well, I'm interested in trying to get kids to play games, real games. And, I'm interested in that with my own family and my kids. But, now I'm interacting with my son's friend and other kids as well. I'm kind of interested in getting them to stop playing Fortnite and start playing something real. So, initially my thought was tabletop war games, and so that was when I first started posting to YouTube. If you go back and you look, the very first video I posted was explaining why I'm trying to teach Riker a game, or that we are, and essentially how we kind of got into tabletop games as a family. Anyways, after that, it was a lot of Marvel Crisis Protocol stuff and just kind of showing look, we like this. We have fun with this, right? And we do. We totally have fun with Marvel Crisis Protocol. But I think my son is more interested in it than I am. And there's a couple reasons for that. And that's kind of what this video is. It's kind of explaining the focus of this channel, all right? So my son really likes the tabletop war games because, he's kind of obsessive compulsive. He's someone who's struggled with washing his hands too much. And so he likes he likes to know that he knows how a thing works, right? So when he goes into playing a role-playing game, there's a part of him that goes I don't know how it's going to work, if I can do it, or if I'm allowed to do it. And so tabletop role-playing games are a little bit of a struggle for him. And then once we started getting out of Dungeons and Dragons, where it's less rules-driven and more kind of open-ended, he started having a lot more fun, because there were times in Dungeons & Dragons where he and I would just fight. And I go, no, I'm saying you can't do that. And he's like, but it's in the rules. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm saying that because I'm the DM. And he's like, but it says you can do it. And he Landon, look it up, and then I'm like, oh, I can't run this because we're playing it like a tabletop war game. Anyway, so when I first arrived here on YouTube trying to make content. It was like, look, I want to make stuff that my kid would like to watch, like, Wargame stuff, because we were getting into Marvel Crisis Protocol and all that. But as I started trying to figure out how to teach Riker a game at the same time, my lean started going from tabletop war game into maybe it's a tabletop role-playing game that he could play. I don't have it here, but that's, where like the Raccoon Sky Pirates kind of came in, and we successfully got him playing a LARPing version of Raccoon Sky Pirates, but not quite the same. Slowly coming off of Dungeons and Dragons, looking at other systems, one of the things that started occurring to me was some of this tabletop war game thing is a little more niche. Like it's kind of a specific person that gets into the tabletop war games. Like I liked it because, it was fun to try and find a game where you're kind of playing toys with rules. And my son and I liked playing it, but I realized right away, this is like a game where you can go one of a couple different ways. Like hyper competitive, like my son, where he's like frustrated at every roll. Or you can kind of go at it like me, where I'm like, I kind of like painting the models, I kind of like playing the game, but I'm not interested in getting into the meta or figuring out which team can stomp every other team. And like, maybe there's a spectrum in between, but you're probably gonna land on one of those two opposites. At least that's my perspective so far, okay? But as I've also been exploring the tabletop role-playing games, I'm like, I can't pin down a one or the other the same way I can with like war games. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of people who are like, yo, 5e, thumbs up, double thumbs up. It's the best game ever. I watch Critical Role. And like, there's people online going, those people are wrong, but hey, there's like thousands of people saying Dungeons and Dragons is for me. Okay. The point is, if I'm interested in making a channel to try and get kids playing games with their parents, one of the things that occurs to me is like, these type of games are probably like, they're going to run the different spectrum of kids a lot better than a tabletop war game would, right? Like I'm thinking about a couple friends of mine who have like 2 or 3 kids. And I'm like, okay, what's more likely to be a game running in their house with part or all of their family? All of their family being optimal, right? Well, war games are like almost out immediately. It's like mom's not going to play, some kind of 4-player version of the war game with the kids and dad, right? So it's like, okay, so maybe it's more like a board game. But that's the thing, is like I've noticed that the board game is right. You can get a kid into a board game. You can get a kid like pretty solid, interested in a board game. We were interested in Catan for a while. But the moment Catan closes, we were done with Catan for the week. And there's not like any crafting or hobby associated with Catan. Now, there is with the tabletop role-playing games. It's not essential, and there definitely is with the war games. So you get what I'm saying? Like I was kind of like this, if I want to help families get their kids off of Roblox and more into real games, you kind of need that dual thing. You need a hobby combined with a game experience. And both war games and tabletop role-playing games hit that. Now, there are board games that hit that softly. And, I just made a video about that with the HeroScape game that I picked up for Riker. So we had a successful game with that. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, hey, any family trying to get their kids into like a war game / board game type of thing, this game would probably be perfect for, because it also dabbles in that hobby side where you get to paint all the miniatures. So that's a great example of a board game that does it. But a lot of the board games I've seen, it's like you could just play it as it is. Like Zombicide, we're not losing out on anything not painting these miniatures. And as well, you don't need to. And the kids are fine playing them with it as it is, right? But the moment you make I keep putting up the same book. The moment you make a campaign of Tales of the Loop, and you got kids that are like invested in it, and you're maybe starting to think about using miniatures or whatever, there's a whole aspect of that where you can branch into a hobby, sort of not fixation, but a hobby interest, painting, building models, like making whole towns. Mouse Ritter is a great one. Like I could go and make an entire video just explaining how Mouse Ritter terrain can be garbage. Like that's amazing, right? Like I just look at that Folgers can over there and drill a little hole in it and make a tube, and it's like, look, it's a mouse. It's a mouse. I was gonna say apocalypse, but it's a mouse metropolis. It's a mouse metropolis, right? And you could build like garbage into a thing. that's something a kid could also get into. Like, and once, let's say I start making my mouse Metropolis, you know, I go, hey kids, you want to help me? You want to drill some holes? You want to put some windows in? Like, it can be a family thing to make the setting of the game, right? So this is something that's occurred to me. And while I'm still going to make, you know, kind of just general gaming stuff, I think a large focus of the channel going forward is probably going to be tabletop role-playing games. Because I think, at least in my early assessment of like the board gaming, wargaming, tabletop role-playing, like my early assessment is, from what I've seen of these so far, these would be the game I could bring to a family of 5 and go, you guys can play this just together, right? And the same thing, like, hey, you guys can play this just together, and it's likely your group is going to grow because your kids are going to talk about this nerdy thing they did on like Friday or Saturday night at their school, and one of their friends is going to be like, yo, can I come try, you know? I've already had the thought like, hey, Bishop, we could get a bunch of your friends from school together over at so-and-so's house, and I could pull out Dragonbane, no S, Dragonbane, right? And I could start running the first initial 2 or 3 games. And because of the way the bestiary book is made in this game, one of you guys could run it by like week 3 or 4, you know? And that was a thought. It was like, that'd be so easy. It wouldn't be as easy to do that with, like, let's say a tabletop war game. And then as well, the tabletop war games, it's like, well, it's probably only for 2 or 4 people. But when you have 5 or 3 people, it kind of messes with the thing. So anyways, all that to say, I have now started reaching out to various developers of tabletop role-playing games, and as well a few tabletop war game makers. And what I'm doing is asking them for their starter boxes. I did it with Free League Publishing, and so I asked Free League, hey, I would like the starter box for this game, this game, this game, this game, this game. I'm not likely going to be able to play all these games, but I want to get in to understand a little bit how they work, and so I want to read them and figure out. For example, I now have had enough time spent learning a little bit about Dragonbane that I could know some of the differences between it and D&D. And I can see a few of the places where I'm like, this game would be easy for kids to play with each other. And this game would be a little easier for a kid to run as the dungeon master, right? So because of the way the monsters work, there's like a little dice system where you roll it, and it's super easy to figure out what the monsters do. You almost even barely have to narrate it because there's like a little section that explains in details. And there's also ways that could branch into narrative discoveries. So I found this system very interesting. But I would like to explore further and get to understand various systems so I can make recommendations to parents who have kids who are interested in getting into gaming systems, you know, at least a breakdown of like, hey, if you guys like this, or if you played this, or if your kids like this video game, this system is probably the one to go with. And also, I want to understand them, right? So I've noticed with the Free League Publishing that they have some similarities between their systems, like the Alien RPG and the Tales from the Loop system both seem to be a D6 system where you roll D6s, and there's different mechanics for getting to re-roll, which is interesting, and it's also helpful to know that because, you know, getting kids into a new game system can be very difficult. From what I'm reading from people's comments, it's also difficult to get adults to do that too, because there's a lot of people who are like, yeah, my players, they'll play D&D, but they won't change to a new game system. And I'm like, why? You know, especially like if you're playing one and maybe there's anything you don't like, right? You know, people won't do that for streaming services. You know, if there's something that you don't like about the streaming service, you go change to a new streaming service. Anyways, I'm just like, so that's been very interesting. You know, I'm not saying I'm not a normie yet. I'm still a normie. But one of the things I'm trying to do is explore these games more so I can get to understand them, so that I can get to make better videos that are helpful to families with kids. And as well, I think these starter boxes, they're not necessarily like the way to go necessarily, but for people who are first starting to get into it, it probably is. Because I've taken a look at what the starter box for the Dragonbane game had, and I thought it was a pretty interesting like conglomeration of various elements. And so I'm a little more curious to see what they have, because I've seen the Dungeons and Dragons starter box, and it's fine. Like it's actually how we got into the game. Anyway, so that's a little summary detailing of like how I'm kind of changing the way I'm looking at the channel. Like I'm going to focus more on these types of games. And I probably won't, we're not going to be playing them all. We don't have time to be playing them all. But I would like to try and sample them. So I'm going to be looking around for people who are running groups of these games. I've already mentioned that I found a guy over in, oh my goodness, I totally forgot where he's from. Anyways, I found a guy who's helping me play the Iron Sworn and Starforged games. And we already got like a session in kind of playing, so I got to sample some of how the game works on like a 2-player game. And next week I'm gonna be trying to get a couple Pirate Borg games because, you know, yar, right? Anyway, so I think you get the point, right? I think you get the idea. So this is kind of where I'm trying to go for the channel. And in the future, I will probably be posting more content related to tabletop role-playing games and summarizing some of the systems that I go through. Free League Publishing has gotten back to me and let me know that they're going to send me a couple of starters. I may have gotten a little greedy when they said that they were going to, because then I was like, oh, wait, but these two as well. So hopefully I have not offended them. But I mean, you know, again, my goal was to actually, in fact, make a video talking about how, like, look, if you buy a Free League game and you don't necessarily like the setting, there's probably another Free League game that might fit the setting you want, where you don't have to learn like 20 new mechanics, since people seem to not like learning new mechanics. And maybe that's me. I might be a fluke. I kind of like learning the different mechanics and then maybe not even playing the games. But all right, I've rambled on long enough. I think you get the idea. I'm trying to graduate from Normie status, both in YouTube and in tabletop role-playing games or board games and such. So there will still be videos on this channel talking about board games, obviously. There will still be, you know, my son making Marvel Crisis Protocol content. And then if I can get him into any other games, that as well. But I'll probably, you know, be focused on these games and then whatever I can acquire in the future. As well, I've gotten some good suggestions from Aaron, the Relentless, okay? And he's suggested to the basic fantasy setting, and I went and looked on TTRPG, and like everything is free. Like, you know, just everything was free. And that was surprising to me, because it's like usually free stuff is garbage, you know, like usually free stuff's not good, but I was going through and it's like, no, it's the whole book, it's all free, and it's a pretty simple system. So I'm gonna start going through that as well to kind of get an idea of, hey, here's what free offers you, you know, and maybe that's like exactly what you're looking for as a gaming group, right? You know, so that'd be helpful to have at least in some balance, because, you know, I mean, these books can get expensive. Like I think this one was like $40, right? So yeah. Anyways, and I'm trying to keep that in mind. I have now run this video almost to 18 minutes. I'm going to try and wrap this up in the next 17 seconds. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate all your comments. I've learned so much in the tabletop RPG space from everyone who has been, you know, just giving me feedback on how to be a DM, how to be a better DM. I'm almost done. God bless you. Have a great day. I think I might get this done before I'm going to make it try in 18 exactly.